Everything in this video is alleged and my own opinion and from my own perspective. Please do your own research and come up with your own opinions. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Me Unmuted. Here's where the stories you're not supposed to hear finally come to light. I'm Angeliz, and every week we dig into the truth, expose the cracks in the system, and bring forward the voices that deserve to be heard. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, like, and share. It's the best way to support this channel and keep these conversations alive. And remember, when you hit that subscribe button, you are becoming unmuted too. Also, everything I do say in this video is alleged and my own opinion, so please do your own research and come up with your own opinions. So last week we left on a very heavy note, and I need to clear some stuff up that I got wrong. So these details are huge and they're very important to my story and also what we're going to be talking about today. So the first thing is I said deputies and cadets were stacking overtime hours, but I didn't explain just how extreme it really was. They weren't just sitting on 100 hours. The pool that they racked up was actually 480 hours total. 480 hours. That's what they had to max out before a single dollar of overtime actually hit their paycheck. Only after that mark did any extra hours roll over into the next pay cycle as real money. So my husband hit that 480 hour ceiling before he even started the academy. And think about that. He began working with the Bexar County Sheriff's Department in February of 2023. And by late May, maybe early June, is when he started the academy, just 3 to 4 months later. And he had already racked up so much overtime that he hit that ceiling of 480 hours. 3 to 4 months. So back to the story, actually about the academy and how the whole situation with my due date and him getting a little bit of off time. So I got some stuff wrong. Here's what actually happened. So when the announcement came that it was finally his class's turn to start the academy, my husband was blindsided because nobody saw it coming. From what we remember, the academy or the recruits were only supposed to be in the jail for 4 to 6 weeks before starting the academy, but it had gone way over that time frame. So essentially, out of the blue, the academy begins, or is set to begin, and he didn't know what to do because here I was, almost 8 months pregnant and about to give birth, and he needed time to be with me and our family. So what did he do? He went to sergeants, lieutenants, and even the captains in the jail asking them for some guidance. They pushed him off to the lieutenant of the academy, and there it was cold and final still. You missed too many days, you're out. No exceptions. You're done. So my husband walked away defeated, but he wasn't done fighting, obviously. He went back to the higher-ups in the jail and told them flat out, either let me bypass the academy or I quit. And that's when the retention sergeant and the chief in charge of the academy got involved, calling a meeting to resolve it. The academy lieutenant was supposed to be there herself to join this meeting, but she didn't show up. So that was the story. Those were the details that I wanted to add, because it is important to what we're going to talk about today. My husband, he wants to be involved with helping me get our story out and other stories from the jail. But it's really hard to remember every little detail from over 2 years ago, especially because we were so sleep deprived, both of us. But what matters is honesty and transparency, and that's what I'm here for. So with that said, let's get back into where we left off. I know the main questions on everyone's mind is, how long was she in the car? Who found her? What was your reaction when you realized? And what were the inconsistencies in the story? I only answered these questions a few times since the accident. 2 of those times were with the authorities, obviously. The other time was with my sister. And I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to share what happened that afternoon when I woke up, but it plays in my head almost every day. So before I answer these questions for the world, I want to get more into why this happened, what caused this, and what's going on in the jail today. This news report from News 4 SA is from August 26, 2024, and it explains what the county plans to do to reduce overtime hours. And yes, overtime is still an ongoing issue to this day. Let's take a listen.
Jail is bursting at the seams. The average daily population is over 5,200 inmates, up from 4,900 last year. Your tax dollars paid for $20 million in overtime for deputies at the jail. In tonight's Waste Watch, the News 4 I-Team's Jay Avila reveals the county's plan to cut back on overtime costs.
The county opened up the south tower of the jail here in 2018 to handle the increase of inmates, but now it's full. The sheriff's department is understaffed by more than 100 positions. So to cover the south tower, it's had to use current deputies working extra shifts at time and a half.
So those current deputies that are working that time and a half for the 127 vacant positions are, according to my husband, allegedly, are most likely the cadets themselves that are working this mandatory overtime. They really cherry coat it, but it's mandatory. It's not voluntary. I mean, it can be, but they force these cadets to do it.
My daughter was 29 at the time of her death, leaving behind a 5-year-old son and an infant daughter.
Rexanne Seidler's daughter, Alexandra Gedminas, died in the jail in 2021 from what was determined to be drug-related heart failure. Seidler says Alexandra fell and was disoriented the night before, and she believes her daughter would still be alive if deputies had been more attentive.
The retired registered nurse used to be asked to work double shifts. It has a huge impact. I'm sorry, but your focus isn't there.
In 2025,
and she's right. All this overtime it's mentally, physically exhausting, and things can slip through the cracks. Like these deputies are supposed to be doing regular checks on the units, and we're going to get more into that later on. There's different units in the jail, and they house different sorts of inmates. So depending on the type of inmate, they have to do regular checks. Sometimes they're every 30 minutes. Sometimes they can't leave them at all. So if they're so tired, I can only imagine, them falling asleep, maybe missing their check, or, just things can go unnoticed when people are overworked like that, in my opinion.
8 inmates have died at the jail. Last year, we had 13 deaths. Whether staffing contributed to that is a topic of debate, but county commissioners are once again trying to cut down on overtime.
Why is there so much overtime at the jail?
Within jail standards, one of the things that they're adamant about, for obvious reasons, is you have to maintain a ratio of deputies to inmates in the jail. So the more inmates you have, the more deputies you have to have physically in the building at any given time.
Salazar says recently approved.
So this man has answered this question many times before, and every time it seems to be a different answer. But what he said is true. You have to have a certain amount of deputies per amount of inmates, and I understand that. But there's more reasons why there's such a high turnover rate and why these deputies do not stay. So let's continue.
Pay raises and signing bonuses have enabled him to fill more deputy positions. Once he fills the current vacancies, the county will allow him to start hiring 70 additional contingency officers to staff the South Tower.
And if I had my druthers and I have to have 70 deputies in this facility, I'd rather have 70 that are not on overtime. They're all well rested.
Since it could be a year until Salazar is ready to hire those contingency officers, the county is budgeting $15 million for overtime next year. The sheriff says another reason.
So $15 million next year of our taxpayer money is going just to overtime for these deputies. So if you didn't understand what he meant by what he just said, he wants to fill those 70 spots with new full-time deputies instead of leaning on the same exhausted workforce, pulling endless extra shifts. And this idea makes sense. Fresh deputies, rested and ready, able to handle the chaos inside the jail. But why does this never happen? Why is turnover so high? And why is the jail bursting at the seams, as they say? Here's the ugly truth. Cadets are thrown straight into the jail before they ever set foot in the academy. In my husband's case, that wait dragged on far longer than promised. Picture it, you've had no real training, no skills to de-escalate dangerous situations, and yet you're shoved into one of the toughest environments imaginable. On top of that, you're slapped with MOT, or mandatory overtime, or even worse, FMOT, forced mandatory overtime, and not getting paid for it. It's no wonder recruits burn out before they even begin. Who could survive in a system like that? It's hell, plain and simple. And that's not just my opinion. The sheriff himself has admitted that mentally ill inmates are stuck in jail far longer than they should be, putting everyone at risk: staff, other inmates, and even themselves. This article from the San Antonio Report from June 6, 2023, around the time my husband was working there, reads: Bexar County Commissioners advanced plans Tuesday to renovate and expand the county's mental health facility on Applewhite Road, including approving the use of eminent domain to acquire property for the effort. The project is expected to create a new 39,000 square foot intake building that can house up to 130 mental health patients, people who would otherwise be in the county jail. It further reads, in the meantime, mentally ill inmates are spending an unusually long time in the jail, endangering jail staff, other inmates, and themselves, according to Sheriff Javier Salazar. Now think about that for a second. You already have untrained cadets being shoved onto the floor without the proper tools to de-escalate. Pair that with a growing population of inmates struggling with serious mental health issues, and it's a recipe for disaster. Instead of creating a safer, healthier system, the jail is building a revolving door. Recruits cycle in, get burned out by FMOT, face dangerous situations they aren't prepared for, and then they leave. Meanwhile, the jail remains overcrowded, deputies remain overworked, and the people who need the most care, the mentally ill inmates, are left to languish in conditions that only make things worse. Another article from the Texas Public Radio from April 4th, 2023 reads, "As many as 300 people at the county jail are so mentally ill, addicted, or disabled they are not competent to stand trial. They don't understand the charges against them, the reason they are there, or what is happening around them." In 2023, the jail housed 4,919 inmates, according to Google. Out of that population, around 300 were identified as mental health patients. My source alleges that when the mental health unit reached capacity, the jail continued taking in mental health patients and classified them as FSP, or full suicidal precaution. That classification might sound like extra care, but in practice, it means deputies are required to check on these inmates a minimum of every 30 minutes around the clock. Imagine the strain that puts on an already short-staffed and exhausted workforce. Deputies aren't just monitoring the general population, now they're tasked with high-intensity supervision of inmates in severe crisis without the specialized training that mental health professionals can properly give. It's no wonder turnover is so high. Who can sustain that kind of workload day after day with little support? And as a result, other inmates who are not listed as FSP may not receive the proper supervision they need. In those gaps, the risk of serious incidents, even death, become very real. The article from the Texas Public Radio goes on to read, "In recent years, the wait times for state hospital beds have swollen to more than 18 months, causing a backlog of people waiting in jails. According to the Bexar County Sheriff's Office, the wait for competency is longer than many of them would have been sentenced to begin with." Here lies a major issue back when my husband was working in the jail. And is this still going on now?
Good morning. Good morning, sir. I'm Sheriff Javier Salazar. Welcome to the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. The process you're about to go through is a very important process. And we're fixing to put you through some stuff.
So now they are using 500 hours of overtime every day.
But what we're going to do is we're going to make you earn this badge.
He was a corrections officer, a jail guard. He was supposed to be keeping order at the Bexar County Jail. Instead, he's one of the ones charged in the death of a Bexar County inmate. This is former Deputy Clemente Lopez.
I could have easily gotten 75, 85, 105 cadets in this classroom. But what do you think I would have had to do to my hiring standards to do that? Lower my standards, and I'm not about to do that.
New tonight, Bexar County Sheriff's deputies arresting one of their own. The deputy is accused of assaulting another deputy he was dating. Today, Abel Munoz Fuentes was taken into custody. Investigators say the assault happened last May. They just found out about it during a deputy's exit interview.
I don't play that game. If you think you've got what it takes to be one of my cadets, come to our career fair coming up this Saturday, the 20th, at the Freeman Coliseum, 3201 East Houston Street at the Expo Hall.
We'll see you there.
So, it seems like nothing has changed since the day my husband was fired, arrested, and accused of 3 felonies. That moment in time shattered my family, and it's the reason I started this podcast. I need to tell this story, and stories, not just for us, but to make sure that no other family is forced to go through the same pain. At its core, this is about more than my story. It's about a system that pushes deputies to the point of total exhaustion, a system that needs to change before more lives are broken. And according to a few retirees in this News 4 story, that is still happening.
It's an issue of fairness. We think that those detention deputies deserve the time they've earned.
Could Bexar County face a lawsuit to get close to $1 million of deputies' mandatory overtime back? We first reported the issue Friday. This morning we're following up as Yami Verhin continues her investigation into why the county won't put the item on their agenda, despite that request from 2 commissioners.
I retired in 2023.
28 years.
I retired in 2008.
Retired on June 30th, 2016.
I retired in 2019.
These Bexar County Sheriff's Office retirees have seen their share of mandatory overtime. What they cannot understand is why the county has not figured out the solution to a problem they say started when the Jail Standards Commission changed the way they monitor inmates more than 15 years ago.
It was referred to as a direct supervision.
And that
So I don't know much about this. I need to do some research and I will get back to you in a future episode about it. But yeah, it's been a long time, and that is crazy because overtime is still a really big issue. And I think this story came out before my husband started working there. So, you know, you live and you learn. I wish we would have done research about Bexar County Sheriff's Department before he started working there, but, you know, fortunately we didn't.
requires detention officers to have sight and sound on inmates in a particular pod or section that they are assigned to at all times.
The supervisors are the bad guys. We've had lieutenants just quit crying because they're so frustrated and getting tired of being yelled at because you got to stay. Well, I can't stay. You got to stay. How much stress does that put on you? You know, and I had 2 lieutenants quit crying. Cap, I can't do this.
And this feeling of frustration.
You know, that's crazy too, because my husband, the way he told me was, so the cadets are first in line to do the overtime. And if there's not enough cadets to do that overtime, they have to go higher up in rank. And like he said, the lieutenants have to do the overtime and they have no choice. I mean, even the cadets don't have a choice, but, you know, either you do the overtime or you have to quit, and you cannot leave until your relief gets there. There's no choice. So, yeah, that's very sad.
Is felt by even sergeants who are also ordered to stay and pull doubles on a daily basis.
I started in the units, and with the mandatory time, you know, they call you up last minute, say, hey, you got to stay another shift. Well, I've got appointments with my wife. I've got, you know,
you got a life,
with my
kids.
You know, I can't change them. I was supposed to be there with them. And lo and behold, you're telling me I can't go home. So I'm locked in with 88 inmates in a cell, in a dorm, and I can't go home. I can barely make a phone call to tell her, you know, hey, babe, I'm sorry I can't be home today.
With a mandatory
Yeah, that's another thing is these deputies are basically locked in the jail as well as the inmates. They are inmates. They have no choice. They cannot leave. And they're also like the inmates because they don't have communication with the outside world. They don't. The only way me and my husband could contact each other was through emails, and that's what you saw in the first video was our private emails through his work email account. And that was the only way he could be updated, like if there was an emergency, because I was very pregnant at this time. If there was an emergency, if I went into labor, it was either email him or I had to call the jail and tell them that there was an emergency and I needed him to call me or come home, one of the two. And it was just this whole system that you had to go through. And, you know, if something were to have happened, there's no telling how long it would have taken for him to find out. So yeah, it's sad. I mean, they have to stay if they get forced mandatory overtime, and the only way they can tell their family is through email.
Over time, the morale is down, and that is causing more issues as detention officers continue to leave at a faster pace than the sheriff's office can recruit, a fact not lost on Commissioner Tommy Calvert and Commissioner Grant Moody.
That is very true. As you saw in my little montage that I did, that they have career fairs almost every month, if not every month. And also the evening testing events, and you know, you could just walk in and take the test, the fitness test, and sign up pretty much. And they have these recruiting signs all over the city. And that last screenshot on Facebook was actually Nathan Buchanan. He actually ran against Sheriff Javier Salazar in the last election, and we voted for him. But yeah, just like he said, they're everywhere around the city. You can't drive anywhere without seeing one.
Who have asked since January for an agenda item on this issue to be included on the county's agenda. Both commissioners want the county to give back 32,000 hours, close to $1 million of mandatory OT lost by deputies. But as Fox SA reported last week, Moody and Calvert's efforts to put this on the agenda have been ignored, even though it is the right of commissioners and the county judge to put items on the agenda.
It's an issue of fairness. We think that those detention deputies deserve the time they've earned. And when they can't take that time because of the situation at the jail and the fact that they're, doing mandatory forced overtime, then, I feel we have an obligation out of fairness to make sure that they keep that time.
According to a county spokesperson, the request from...
Yeah, he's right. I mean, it's also not fair that these cadets don't get paid their overtime until they hit that 480 ceiling. That's a lot of time. And my husband got to that ceiling, like I said earlier, in 4 months, 3 to 4 months, something like that. And if you think about that, that's a lot of time in just a short amount of time to work. Like, that's crazy. I still can't believe he did that. When I say it, we never saw him. We literally never saw him, ever. He worked at the jail for 8 months, I think. But yeah, 8 months, we never saw him, ever. The jail doesn't just trap inmates. It traps the deputies, the cadets, every single person inside those walls. Some wear jumpsuits, others wear uniforms, but either way, they're all doing time. And if this system can grind down the very people sworn to enforce it, what do you think it does to the people who can't leave? Because here's where it gets darker. Some inmates don't survive this system. Some never walk out alive. This next story needs to be talked about. There isn't much coverage that I can find or even an update. We don't have to imagine what that looks like, because just this month, 33-year-old Dimitri Lira was found dead inside the Bexar County Jail. His mother, Aurelia, says she never even got the chance to say goodbye. And now the family is left asking the same questions we're all asking. Was someone checking on him? Did anyone notice the warning signs? Or were there people in charge simply too overworked, too understaffed, too broken by this system to prevent another tragedy? Because here's the truth. When deputies are treated like prisoners, the inmates pay the price too. And sometimes that price is their life.
I need closure.
Oralia Sandoval never got to say goodbye to her son. Dimitri Lira died Monday morning while in custody at the Bexar County Jail. He was 33 years old.
When people have loved ones that go to jail, your thought is not that they're gonna die there.
Lira had been in jail since late July. San Antonio police arrested him for assault of a family member.
He got into a confrontation with his aunt that lives here in this house.
Was aggression a symptom of what he went through as a child?
Yes.
At the age of 15, Lira had brain surgery.
And he survived a brain tumor. And it scarred him. He had a full man's body, but the mind of a child.
He was a big wrestling fan. He loved Pokemon.
Doctors prescribed him a list of medicine to take every day. His mother, brother, and sister say they called and sent letters to make sure the Bexar County Jail knew. We first learned about Lira's death when the Bexar County Sheriff's Office sent a news release Monday night. A spokesperson said he died after a medical episode that may have been compounded by pre-existing medical conditions.
Okay, so the sheriff likes to label these accidents as medical episodes, and this poor man, unfortunately he had a medical condition. He had cancer, I believe, a brain tumor, and his mom said that he was never the same after that surgery. And I'm not sure, I have to ask my husband, but he is supposed to be, or he was supposed to be getting meds. I don't know how that works. I don't know who is supposed to be administering that medication. But if he didn't get his medicine and, had a reaction because of that, that is disturbing, to say the least. Because, okay, in my opinion, allegedly, I feel like what happened was somebody who was supposed to be monitoring this poor young man's unit wasn't. And this was in the morning, I believe around 8 in the morning. And who knows if the deputy that was supposed to be monitoring the unit was even doing his checks or her checks. And it slipped through the cracks and something happened to him. This is very unfortunate, and I feel for this family. I can't imagine what they're going through right now.
Got that release on Monday night. We requested an interview with the sheriff. A spokesperson for the office sent us this statement instead. It reads in part: the Bexar County Sheriff's Office is responsible for the safety and security of the facility. Inmate medical care is handled by University Health, our contracted medical provider.
What questions?
I feel like the sheriff is blaming somebody else for this issue. How is this the University Hospital? How is it their fault? That makes no sense. They are not the ones that are supposed to be checking on the inmates. It's the deputies. This is very sad.
Does your family still need answers to?
What was the medical episode that caused my brother's death? And
exactly, they don't even know what happened.
Were there regular checks being done?
Another law enforcement agency will review what happened in Lira's case. Those findings will then be sent to a state commission as Lira's family finds a way to mourn. They're hoping this never happens again.
I don't want anyone else to go through with what I'm going through.
I sympathize with her. I really do. That makes me want to cry. This is exactly why I'm doing this podcast, because this needs to be out there. This is absolutely disgusting that this happened. It's another fault in this system that isn't working, obviously. And unfortunately, lives are being lost. My daughter she almost died. And I can't imagine what this family is going through, because their family member actually did pass away. Something needs to change, because this is not right. So I looked into Dimitri's case a little bit further, and actually the article that KSAT put out for that story has some details that they didn't put in the video. So I would like to go over that with you. So yes, he survived a brain tumor and it scarred him for the rest of his life. That's what his mom said. And he had a full man's body, but the mind of a child. So we heard this in the video, that they're responsible for the safety and security of the facility, blah, blah, blah. But what they didn't say was KSAT asked BCSO when Dimitri had last been seen before being found unresponsive on his bunk by the unit officer at 8:40 a.m. The spokesperson said the previous two required observations were conducted at 8:28 and 8:04 a.m. And then Vanessa Sandoval said the deputy who showed up at her family's home to report Dimitri's death said his body had already started decomposing by the time he was pronounced dead. Quote, his blood was already pooling at his fingertips when they saw him at 8:40 this morning, she said. BCSO said they tried to administer Narcan to Dimitri when he was found. I actually looked this up. This is called liver mortis, I believe. Liver mortis. Liver mortis is the process where blood pools in dependent tissues following cessation of the circulation. It is first noticed as a purple discoloration beginning about 2 hours after death, and for a period of time it is not fixed. That is an area of lividity subjected to pressure will become white as the deoxygenated blood is pressed back into the capillaries. So, in my opinion, I believe that whoever was responsible for that unit was not doing their checks, or allegedly might have been asleep, or just didn't care. And it's very unfortunate because it cost this young man his life. I will keep y'all updated with the updates on that case, because it hits close to home, honestly, and I want there to be accountability for this. I'm sure you do as well, especially if you live here in Bexar County. But yeah, I will update you guys if I get any updates on that case. And I just hope there's accountability, because stories like Dimitri Lira's aren't just headlines. They're reminders of what happens when a system collapses under its own weight. A mother left with nothing but questions, a family broken. And it hits close to home for me because my family has lived inside that same system. The exhaustion, the impossible choices, the feeling that no matter what you do, you're set up to lose. That's why I tell these stories, because what happened to my husband and what happened to Dimitri, they're not separate. They're connected. Deputies, cadets, inmates, families, we're all caught in the same machine that keeps grinding people down. Behind those walls, no one escapes the weight of this system. Not the inmates, not the deputies. Deputies are prisoners too. And by telling these stories, the victims, like my daughter and my husband, we're becoming unmuted.